And we're missing, oh, Ron's there now, okay.
Yeah, I live in
Okay. Oh, we're missing Libby, right?
Yeah.
But, so I ended up making a ticket on it.
And I don't know that we're in a big hurry.
He's got his video shut off right now.
That means he's smoking.
But so I got in there verified. It's just getting there so tight. You get a total little piece of it. It's just, I don't know. And it's funny. I'm glad the guy on the other day.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah.
Did they have some sort of the storm yesterday? Was there much damage with that?
On our system?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I came home and my garage door was sucked out, so I didn't know. I didn't know how bad it was.
There was a lot of wind, and there was one breaker operation, which is a short interruption on TVA that affected the whole region, but we didn't have anything that I heard about on our system.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know if they'd said there had been any rotational winds or what was going on, but the way my garage door was, so I wasn't sure what to do.
They certainly did in Alabama.
Well, the one that took out our warehouse up here, Ron, like probably about 10 or 15 years ago, was a straight line wind. So they'll get you through.
I couldn't figure out how I took my garage door shut and then it sort of sucked it out and bent it out.
Oh, Libby.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Somebody check to make sure Aaron got us on.
And we're on, the video is on, the link posted, but I have told him not to put the audio live until I tell him to.
Oh,
Which he can hear us right now, I'm sure.
okay.
Meeting co-writer.
Hey, there's Libby. Need to load her on.
Is that Libby coming?
Yeah, can you let Libby?
Yeah, oh, duh.
You got the driver's thing over there.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Here she comes.
Okay, guys, give us 1 second. I'm gonna go have them, I'm gonna get them to put the audio live to the TV and then y'all can.
There she is.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Libby.
Hello.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing?
Very good.
Doing good.
Good.
All right, cool. Everything is live and the audio, y'all need to go.
All right. Bring the order of the meeting together. First thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda, and I would like to add a couple of items or changes to the item. We have our attorneys from Lexington on board, and I would like to put the things that they are involved in up front so they can be on their way. I would like to change the agenda, move item number 4 to number 3, which is consider the engagement agreement with Frost, Brown, and Todd. And I would like to add an agenda in regard to that is considering the authorization for Frost, Brown, and Todd to take action to recover the GEP's rights under the flexibility clause of the TVA contract. I would make a motion to that effect. Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. I think that's that. Are we ready to approve the agenda?
Yeah, I think we are.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
DT, was that a motion?
Pardon?
Somebody filed a motion? Was that?
Yeah, I think Mr. Wichert made the motion. Did he?
Okay,
To accept the agenda.
all right, and then you had a second, all right.
Yeah. And I presume it's approved. I don't think.
Well, don't, make sure there's a vote. I don't want to presume anything, so just, I messed up the vote by chiming in here, so I'm sorry about that.
I miss protocols a lot. All in favor to accept the agenda for the night's menu as revised, please signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Hearing none, motion carries. The agenda is accepted. The first thing on the agenda is approval. We've done that. Considering the minutes of the December 22nd, 2020 regular meeting. Does anybody have anything to say about that? Any adds or
I
subtracts?
do.
Okay.
DT, if you would look at page 4 of the minutes of last month's meeting, it is reflected in there, and we did point this out to you during the meeting, that you did not ask for a second on your motion regarding Frost, Brown, and Todd, but proceeded with that roll call vote and then passed the motion. But there was never a second, and that was pointed out to you at that time.
Yeah, I can't say that I didn't miss the protocol there. I will correct it with the motion this evening. The motion that will be presented in regard to that will correct that oversight.
All righty, just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I'm glad you did. Okay, the first.
Wait a minute, DT, so, all right, so has anybody filed a motion yet?
No, we don't have a motion yet on the agenda. I mean, the minutes.
Okay,
Do you want to correct the minutes, Libby, or just want to let them stand?
Well, I mean, the minutes are accurate. I just wanted to point out to you that you did not ask for a second on that motion that you went ahead and passed. So I think since the minutes are reflected accurately, that would take some action on your part otherwise than the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes, I agree with that, and it was an oversight on my part. Okay.
so you still need an approval of the minutes then as
Yes,
they
I
are
do.
written?
I'm waiting
Well, then I'll
for.
make a motion that we approve the minutes as they stand.
Have a second?
Second.
Second is made. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to consider the engagement agreement with Frost, Brown, and Todd. I sent out a copy of the engagement letter this afternoon, and I sent a letter or an email regarding the motion in regard to that. So the floor is open for discussion on that issue. And
You
Mr.
need
Barrett and Mr. Hoffman are here this evening and
Hey,
can
DT.
ask questions.
DT,
Yes.
you need to, I mean, is there any motions on the floor to discuss? Is that what?
No, not yet. The motion, and I will make the motion. I move to accept the fee schedule proposed by Warren Hoffman of Frost, Brown, and Todd in the letter of December 29th, 2020 to the GEPB and to ratify their engagement. The letter was sent out. I presume that most people got a copy of it.
DT,
Yes.
get you a second on your motion so then y'all can discuss it.
Okay. May I have a second?
Have a second.
Have a second? Okay. The floor is open for discussion.
I've got a couple of questions, DT. Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Hunter, thank you for showing up today. Appreciate you being here so that we can address some questions the board may have. Appreciate y'all's participation in the meeting this evening. The question really is more for the board. Are we going to set parameters or maybe limits on what we, and maybe do some progress billing, start getting reports back from Frost, Brown, and Todd regarding their how they feel like they're moving along on the case, whether or not we want to continue, moving along without some, stop signs in the way at $495 an hour. And you get a couple of attorneys working on this thing for a week or so, it's going to get very expensive. So, I think it's always good policy to go ahead and kind of put some speed bumps in the way. Let us come back and review based on where we think we've gotten on our progress, and just bring that up before the board again before we may want to continue on, instead of just kind of leaving a blank checkbook out here. I think it's always probably good policy. So that's one thing I want to discuss and see how the board feels about that. I just want to make sure we're not being remiss and standing by our fiduciary duty to this board. So one issue that I want to talk about. I've got a couple more questions, but we can wait till we get through this motion, and so I can ask questions.
Well, I mean, since we didn't even have the actual fee schedule until it was emailed to us today, I would like to know how much money has already been spent. Because $495 an hour for an attorney.
I don't know that we have a bill.
$50 an hour for a paralegal. And, I mean, if you might as well say $500 an hour, that $5 is neither here nor there. I mean, that's more than the average person in Glasgow makes in an entire week.
It is, but it is not unusual for litigation or a law firm at this level.
Let me finish what I was saying. I'm speaking right now. And doing all this to get out of an agreement that will bring good paying jobs here, I would just like somebody to please explain the logic behind that.
The contract that we are locked into is a 20-year plus whatever delay we have in getting onto it. It is a $500 million contract. It is not to be taken lightly, and to get into it without the option of getting out is absolutely insane. We don't know what TVA is going to do. The management of TVA 10 years down the pike. You don't know who it's going to be. You don't know what their costs are going to be. And the only option, a little operation like we have, is the option to leave. This precludes that option. You can't leave. You just pay for whatever they want. And to sit here and take this is just precluding all the future boards from having any options at all. Now, it's going to be expensive to get out of this unless TVA says, okay, we'll let you go. But if they don't, it's going to be expensive. But comparatively, it is a small amount of money compared to what we're paying.
Well,
and there is not really an option to get out if we don't take them on.
And once again, as we discussed in length at last month's meeting, 20-year contracts in the energy industry are standard to the industry.
This is not a 20-year contract.
We already know.
This is not a 20-year contract. It's an indefinite contract.
It's a 20-year contract.
Not
and
true.
Once again, that is standard in the energy industry. And we already know that TVA, even if for no other reason whatsoever, economic development, as was touched on last month, just to reiterate to you gentlemen, you know, TVA is paying $170,000, $180,000 a year for the next 3 years for our new industrial park. They were instrumental in helping get CATL here, you know, so we are not we get a 3.1% rebate back each month that helps people who are having a hard time pay their bill, because we chose to put the $4,500 per month at community relief. It also gives us the opportunity to generate 3 to 5% of our own power, which can then be thrown back into the grid to help lessen people's bills, which you keep saying, DT, is your ultimate goal, but you're kind of going around it in a backwards way. So, you know, like I said, you can say what you want to say, but as far as any other energy company, you can't predict what's going to happen to them 10 years down the road either. So it's not TVA, that's any company. But once again, 20-year contracts are standard in the energy industry. Now, the one thing that I do want to say though, CATL is counting on us to be in a long-term agreement, which does include this flexibility agreement, correct, Billy?
Yes, ma'am. That's been offered to them, and they have accepted that offer as part of their decision to purchase the property. Yes.
Okay. So, you know, DT, this does not just affect a handful of ratepayers. This affects all of Glasgow, Barron County, and surrounding counties to get this industry here. So, if they Google Glasgow, what's going to come up? EPB meetings. Or if they happen to watch a meeting, I mean, it's plain to see that nobody wants to pay attention to facts or data or experts or research or even reality, I think, at this point. So what message are we sending to companies that may be looking to come here in the future now that we can't even honor our word? Y'all need to think about the farther reaching repercussions.
I will point out, Libby, this board did not offer its word. There's some people here that did and sent this contract off without approval of this board. It's going to be expensive to get it back, but because of the negligence involved in signing on to it, which we wouldn't have, it's going to be expensive. But compared to the 20-year contract, it's a very small sum of money. And it's necessary for our future livelihood.
A board did vote for this long-term agreement, which did include the flexibility agreement. A board did vote on that.
And the flexibility came up, and we don't have the flexibility. You're just talking word. You're just talking word salad. You're not saying.
No, I'm not talking anything. I'm laying the facts out, which is what you don't want to hear.
Every time someone disagrees with you, you accuse them of using word salad. It is not our fault that you can't understand what we're saying. So open your ears, listen to what's going on. Okay.
I mean, at this point, I feel like
this contract was properly ratified. The flexibility agreement was properly ratified. I understand that we're going to litigate this. More than welcome to do it. All I'm saying to you is right now, we were given an opportunity to review all of this. We discussed these things ad nauseum over several months.
Months.
It was signed and sent, period. So you're
And
trying to
honestly, at this
unwind
point-
this, you're trying to unwind this agreement to the detriment of the citizens of this community. Now, you don't have to live here but about 2 months out of the year, okay? You don't have to deal with the fallout. My father, I remember him telling me a story one time about when he moved to Michigan when he was 18 years old. He came back to Tompkinsville where he grew up, and a car drove by his parents' house running wide open, and he hollered at the guy, told him to slow down. And his father reached over, grabbed him by the arm and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "What do you mean? I'm trying to keep him from killing somebody." He said, "Son, I've got to live here. You don't." All right? Well, that's what I'm saying to you, DT. I've got to live here. You don't. And you don't for the majority of the year. We have to deal with the fallout of this. We are still in a position where we're trying to create prosperity for the citizens of this community. And what you're trying to do, and the other two, Glenn and Marlon both, you are simply trying to take away the hand that is going to feed us. It's the biggest opportunity we've had in this community in over 45 years. It's the largest investment in the state of Kentucky in the year 2020. And you are wanting to try to take this away. And it's been made very clear to you from experts all the way up and down the chain that this is that you are putting this project in peril by doing this today. So there's Libby, I'm with you. I understand the importance of it. It's not about winning. All right. It's about trying to do what's best for our community. I just wish the other three board members are on the opposite side of this understood that.
Yeah, I know. Because at this point, I really do feel like I'm in Orwell's 1984. You know, the farther a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. That's about the point we're at.
Yeah. So I do have a couple more questions for Mr. Hunter.
Hey,
and Mr.
I was going to say something there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Glenn. Go right ahead.
I talked to the most influential man that's been responsible for bringing that battery factory to this town, and that's the mayor. And I spoke with him in quite some length. Were you all at any of the meetings that when this factory came to town? He was at every meeting. Yeah, he's the most influential person to bring them here.
Okay.
There's others from Idea Park that have also, but I feel confident, that he would know.
Keep believing that.
So you're saying the mayor doesn't know?
I'm not saying.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on that.
All right, guys, we're getting a little far afield. Let's
DT,
focus on the motion.
DT, the motion, I don't want to cut anybody off. I understand their arguments, and which probably truly more address the new item number 4 as opposed to 3, but I know they're intertwined. I just want to be sure really what's on the table right now is that engagement letter, not anything further than that right now.
Well, in order to accept the engagement letter, we're hiring Frost, Brown, and Todd, Ronnie. So I think this is the appropriate time to address this and have this discussion at this point before we move forward. These things need to be out on the table. People need to understand the ramifications of their actions. The public needs to understand the ramifications of their actions, and that's what we're doing today. But I do have a couple of questions before we vote to engage. What do you think our potential for success is, guys? I'm addressing this to the attorney. What do you feel our potential for success is in prevailing in this case?
Barry, do you want to address that? Sure. Is that Mr. Taylor who's posing the question?
Yes, that's Mr. Taylor. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Mr. Taylor, there's a challenge. I mean, first of all, I don't really feel comfortable, as I understand this is a public meeting. And I guess as I also understand, I understand this is a public meeting, and to discuss the strategy of a lawsuit is a little difficult in public. But, there has been a challenge from the fact that there was this provision in this long-term agreement that you all are talking about that gave the board the right to cancel the agreement. And action was taken by, I guess, you and Mr. Ray that waived that cancellation right without the board knowing it. And TVA is going to argue that because you and Mr. Ray did that, we can't get that cancellation right back. And that's a challenge. And, you know, there's also a challenge in that you and Mr. Ray won't talk to me to try to help me put together this strategy. But with all of those factors, I think that we have a reasonable chance of success. I'm hoping the TVA will come back and talk with us. We wrote them a letter 2 weeks ago, and so far they've ignored us. That's a little disappointing, but hopefully we can do things to step up the pressure and get them to respond.
Okay, so a couple of, I take issue with a couple of things you said. You said it was Mr. Ray and myself. First of all, Mr. Ray had nothing to do with it. It was me and my capacity as chairman. So we'll just leave Mr. Ray out of it. He was doing his duty and presenting that to the chairman of the board before it was presented to the rest of the board, or if it was even going to be presented to the rest of the board. But I feel like, of course, I had the capacity to sign the agreement. Number two, I've not refused to speak with you. Be happy to speak with you at any time that you want to have a discussion. However,
you got to tell your lawyer that, because he wrote me a different letter.
Yeah, I'm going off of this. I'm going off of this board after this meeting tonight. So, you know, this is I'm going to be limited as the amount of time that I have to ask you questions. So, I need to take advantage of that, you know, while I'm here. And before we engage you at $495 an hour, there are certainly some questions that I have just to ensure that, you know, we're going down the right path and we're not just throwing a bunch of money down the drain. Because just like DT said, admittedly, this is going to be very expensive. And the people that pay for this are the citizens of this community, because every dollar that we spend in expense has to be recouped through an increase in the rates. Or we have to start reducing our maintenance on the grid through the operational cost of the grid. That's not going to happen. So our only other option is to increase rates on everybody. So everybody else is going to be paying for this, not us, not the board, the citizens of this community.
Every ratepayer with EPB service will be paying all these legal fees. That's exactly.
Right. So the question I have, I guess, before we move, I want to make sure we've got a clear strategy of what's going to happen first, and we're not just, you know, throwing money up against, or, you know, stuff against the wall here. But so let me ask you, you know, where do you find that we have strengths, and what arguments are we going to take?
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, I'm not going to discuss that with you in this meeting, because I mean, right now we're in an adversarial posture with TVA, and to discuss kind of the strategy of that lawsuit in a public meeting just isn't kind of what you do. And I'm sure you can appreciate that. If you want to talk about it in that meeting that I tried to arrange with you, I'm happy to do that.
Well,
but it's
I'll tell you what,
to talk. I'm
we
sorry.
We can solve this very quickly, Mr. Hunter. Then I'll make a motion that we go into executive session under the provisions of the closed meeting rules to discuss potential litigation. And then maybe we can talk in a closed session without the public being present. So I'm going to go ahead and make that motion. If anybody would like to get a second. I'm sure these are things that we need to talk about before we have a clear understanding of what it's going to cost us, what your strategy is, and where we're going to be heading in some of this stuff, so that we know we're not just throwing stuff up against the wall and wasting the ratepayers' money. So I want to go ahead and make a motion. We go into closed session to discuss pending litigation under the open meeting rules. Ronnie, if you could give me that code, please.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, Tag. I was trying to stop you there.
We have a motion on the floor.
Wait a minute, DT. He's got to make the motion proper. So the motion, Tag, let me find the exception, okay? Give me just a second. I got my book here. It would be, of course, KRS 61810. I'm looking for the litigation one. But discussions of proposed or pending litigations, that would be section C. So 61.810 subsection C, Tag, would be what you need to cite with just a I think you basically have said it in your motion, but a very brief
Sure.
statement of what the discussion is going to be about in closed session.
I'll be happy to perfect the motion. I'll move under KRS 61.810 subsection C, under provisions for pending litigation, that we go into closed session to discuss pending litigation between EPB and TVA.
I think we have a motion already on the floor.
Well, DT, that one has to take a second seat if we're going to use this for discussion. We're still in the discussion phase. We can come back and pick this motion up in just a minute.
Our parliamentarian, what's the rules here?
Are you referring to me as parliamentarian?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who else?
I didn't know. Well, I mean, I think it's part of that discussion I don't think there's any reason you can't go into closed session, but you got a motion, you got to have a second, you got to agree to go in closed session to start.
Well, I second the motion.
All right, have a motion and a second to go into closed session.
Call the question.
Any further? All right, motion's on the floor, called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
Y'all seriously don't even want to know what somebody who we're paying $495 an hour for an attorney, y'all seriously do not want to go in and at least have a discussion?
We got into this because of things that was beyond our control. It's going to be expensive.
No, I'm just, that's not what I just said. I said it is negligent on this board to not even go into a closed session for a few minutes and have a discussion with this attorney.
The motion
That is
is
so
failed. The motion is
Well, you're
failed. You're
still
out of order.
Hey, DT, when they were voting, I want to be sure. I didn't know who voted, so y'all not
Okay,
here.
we'll have a roll call vote on whether or not we go into closed session.
I just want to be sure everybody voted. I don't think I heard Glenn, but I didn't hear Mr.
Well,
I mean,
thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian. Roll call vote. Tag. In the closed session, yes or no?
Yes.
Libby?
Yes.
Glenn?
No.
Marlon?
No.
DT? No. Motion fails.
What a negligent board.
Next item on the
No,
agenda.
you are so cavalier with spending your citizens' money. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda.
Mr. Hunter, I will call you after this meeting is over and we can discuss.
We can talk tomorrow. I'm going to be with my family after the meeting's over.
Yeah, well, and so am I, and I've got to take my child to the doctor in Louisville tomorrow, so tomorrow's going to be a hard time for me. I just figured while it was fresh on our mind, it won't take 5 minutes. If you can give me 5 minutes of your time, let's see, let me 495 divided by 12. You make $41 just talking to you.
Oh, come on, Ted.
Given your attitude, I don't think, I think we can arrange it during regular business hours.
All right.
But I appreciate your comments.
Let's move on. I'd like to make a motion that the board.
Wait, DT. We're getting sidetracked again. There's a motion. Is the discussion over with regarding the motion about the employment?
Okay. We voted on the primary motion we voted on, right?
No, you've not voted on your motion. You just had motion, second, and discussion. So is all the discussion over with?
Okay.
About the employment of Frost, Brown, and Todd in ratification of last meeting.
All right. I understand.
So if there's no further discussion,
all in favor, it's time to take a vote on the original motion, which is to authorize.
No, it's to engage the firm, ratify the engagement, and accept their engagement letter.
I want to make sure I've got everything straight here real quick before we vote. So we are voting on accepting an engagement from Frost, Brown, and Todd, paying them $495 an hour with no backstops They have free reign to spend money however they see fit. And we can't get an explanation from anyone right now as to where we're heading with this to determine or even estimate what this is going to cost. Have I got that straight? Is that where we are?
Seems like you summed that up pretty good.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
All right.
I just want to make sure we have it straight.
Repeating the motion, we have moved, it's a move to accept the fee schedule proposed by Warren Hoffman of Frost, Brown and Todd in the letter of December 29th, 2020 to the 2021 to the GEPB and ratify their engagement. Motion's there. Have a roll call vote. Libby?
No.
Todd? Tag? Excuse me.
Hell no.
Glenn?
Yes.
Mr. Witcher?
Yes.
DT, yes. Motion carries. All right, the next step is to move that the board authorizes counsel, Frost, Brown, and Todd to take any action that council deems appropriate, including the initiation of litigation on GEPB's behalf to restore the GEP's right to terminate its long-term agreement with TVA under Section 2E of that agreement, or to otherwise challenge the validity of the long-term agreement. Any discussion?
You need a second, DT, for discussion.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Got a second? Discussion?
Yeah. How many hours do you all anticipate putting into this thing? Any idea?
Todd, we can shut
We have
this
an
down.
Excuse me, DT, I'm asking the attorneys a question. How many, do y'all have any estimate?
Gary, no longer on the call.
No, I'm on the call. I mean,
You've all been doing this a long time. I'm sure you have some estimate. I mean, I'm a CPA. I can pretty much tell you what an audit's going to cost me and how much hours we're going to have.
yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, you probably as a CPA, you've been involved in litigation with entities like TVA, so you know that they can come to an agreement very quickly, in which case it'll take less than 100 hours, or they can drag this out and make it very difficult, in which case it can take a whole lot of hours.
Well, I know which way they're going to go. I mean, I pretty much tell you.
Well, that's kind of a concern, Mr. Taylor, about talking about it with you, you know?
I'm sorry?
I still haven't gotten an answer to a question that I originally asked. How much money has already been spent on these attorneys before the board ever actually officially voted or even saw their fee schedule? How much money has already been spent?
Yeah,
Well, we haven't spent any money because we haven't sent you a bill yet, and I don't know how much the accrued time is, but that's certainly something I can get to the board.
That would be nice. I mean, the responsible thing to do, some of us would like to actually be responsible and how much more money we are heaping on the ratepayers. So that would be much appreciated.
Further discussion? Hearing none?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is just a logistical question. You all approved this engagement letter. Are you now, if this motion passes, are you suggesting that it be modified? I mean, this agreement, this contract has a scope of representation in it, which I would think is broad enough to cover what you're talking about. But since you're dealing with it as a separate motion, are we going to ask Frost Brown to modify this agreement, which has not been executed yet?
We can modify the agreement consistent with that motion if you would like us to.
Well, it doesn't matter to me. The board's the one that's talking about engaging you, but I don't understand why there's two different actions here.
The second agreement is just so that the board knows that we're authorizing them to do this in specific terms.
I think the only really difference there that was mentioned is the authority to specifically, which I think is already in the engagement letter, but the authority to engage in litigation if necessary.
I just need to be told whether I'm supposed to execute this one as it stands or whether you all are about to expand it.
In my judgment, the current engagement letter is fine, but whatever the board wants us to do on that.
I'm comfortable with the engagement letter as it is.
All right, we can drop this then. Okay.
No, I think we should still have the authorization.
There's it.
Yeah, I
would think there. Yeah, I would think there is an authorization here that's not implicit in item number 3.
Right. I'm just saying I don't think you need to change the engagement letter because of the authorization, but I still think you should have the authorization.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you still need to address your motion, DT.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I read the motion?
You did, DT, and I think you got a second.
We have a second.
Yeah, you already got the second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote. Tag, how do you vote? Yes or no?
So I'll put
Libby?
No.
hockey sticks on it again.
Libby is a no. Glenn?
Yes.
Mr. Pritchard?
Yes.
DT is yes. Motion carries.
I do have one other little thing I'd like to bring up. Mr. Hunter, you had said that I've refused to speak with you and you told me to take it up with my attorney. I'm looking at the letter that he sent you and it says plainly in the second paragraph, because of the ongoing litigation and the current, with DT Frodes, the current chairperson of the Glasgow EPB, and questions as to your role as counsel of the Glasgow EPB, my clients have asked that any communication with you be limited to the attorneys at this time, i.e. the two of us at this stage. My clients are willing to cooperate and will be transparent with regard to the vetting, discussions, and execution of the two agreements. So I just want to make sure that we get that on the record. Nobody is obstructing here. And just to make sure that we have a clear understanding that through my attorney, I have indicated to you that I am willing to be open and transparent in the process. At this point, though, I've learned, like you said, been involved in lots of litigation, that it's best at this time to let my attorney handle whatever's going on. So I just want to make sure that's out there. You have a clear understanding of what that letter said. I hope you read it. And so that the public understands that I'm not obstructing this process. Willing to talk to you. Just want to make sure that my rights are protected in the process. And as my role as a member of this board, and the board's rights are protected in the process. Okay.
And Mr. Taylor, just so you know, what I have talked to your lawyer about was us having a conversation in which he was present. And that's what I'm still looking to do.
Okay.
And I hope we can do that. I think you said we could do it soon. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Speaking of clearness of the record, I'd like to point out that Mr. Hunter has alleged I took action even though I've never spoken to Mr. Hunter, not once. Yet he's making allegations about my participation in some wrongdoing, and I take great personal offense to that, and I want the record to show that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren, Barry, I suppose you're dismissed. You can turn your meter off.
Thank you.
And Glenn, just for you were talking about the mayor being so instrumental in getting CATL here. So I would say that if you talk to Michael Hale, he would probably have a very different take on everything going on as far as CATL. So, have you talked to him about his opinion on what's going on with this board in relation to that company coming here?
I'm aware that Michael Hale was also involved. The mayor did mention that. So I'm not saying it was just the mayor, but I know
have
he was.
You actually talked to Michael Hale to see what his input would be on the ramifications of what part of this board is trying to do in relation to CATL locating here? Have you actually talked to Michael Hill concerning that?
I have not spoke with Michael Hill about that particular.
Okay.
I will, but I haven't.
This
Well,
is,
Yeah, I think you're ready for the next item, DT.
Yeah.
Find
it's time to
better.
consider any modifications of court orders. Billy Ray, are you?
No, DT. I think you just moved the bad debt down, so that would be the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put a 3 number on it and already crossed off 3.
No, it's down. It would be the next item because you just moved those other 2 up.
I see. Consider the COVID response to bad debt and results. Billy Ray, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do a real quick report on that. It hasn't changed a lot, except that we now have multiple team members, even though we have, I thought, really bent over backwards trying to keep, we divided everybody in half and kept those 2 halves from running into each other. Still, we've got more than 1 positive COVID test among the team. So that is extending the number of people we do not have available to meet our mission. So it's going to have more and more of an impact on us. The lobby's still closed. We're trying our best to not go in people's homes. And still trying to do all of our business through the drive-through window. The report on how it's affecting us financially is more of a report on how it's affecting Community Relief Fund. On the right side of this, you can see this highly unusual November and December where the Community Relief has issued greater than $10,000 worth of vouchers to help people pay their electric bill. I don't have enough history on them to know if those are records for Community Relief Fund. I suspect they are, because they normally wouldn't have the kind of funding that they've got with our participation and DBA's partnership to get more money funneled to these relief agencies. So the trend right now in money spent is very similar to the trend in COVID-19 infection cases. And next month, hopefully I'll be able to give you more of a report on all of 2020 and how our bad debt spiked. And then when we started doing cutoffs again, it began to come down. And I think you'll probably want to see that picture. But because we're short on people, I can't show it to you tonight, but we'll have it for you in February.
How many people are out?
From our team, specifically, first person, 3 people. But we also have some people who have infections in their home, and they've been exposed, and so they're quarantined, so we don't have access to them either. So it is really becoming a difficult thing. Of course, that's what we're signed on for, is to do difficult things, but it's even more difficult than usual, I'll just say that. And that's all of item number 3, so we can get back on track now unless you all have questions about anything.
All right. Let's see if I can.
Item 5, if you're ready for that, is just a placeholder, and as far as I know, unless Ronnie has anything.
Billy, I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just a second? Michael Hale just sent me a message and said that he is on his way to the EPB. If somebody could let him in the side door when he gets there.
Is he wearing his mask, I hope?
I'm sure he is. He's good about that.
I'm afraid he's not on the agenda, guys.
Yeah.
Well, he's the county judge. I'm sure we can afford him the respect he deserves.
He is not on the agenda. I'm not sure what he wants, but.
Well, I think that maybe there was an untruth spoken, and he's coming to correct that.
All right.
So
Carry on. Sorry.
We need some direction here. I mean, we published this thing is closed. So
We've gotten off track here. The next item is the modification of court orders. Is that what you said, right, Billy?
Yeah, but I think somebody's in the parking lot, I need to be directed on whether to let them in or not. I don't know what is appropriate. I don't know what's legal.
Well, of course, you got to comply with COVID, but it's not, to me, it's not an item on the agenda. They had discussion, and whether he is brought up or not, that discussion is over with, and it could be discussed.
I move that we suspend the rules and allow the county judge executive to address the board.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, it's the county judge, and this is a very high stakes discussion going on. So I think that we should certainly afford him the respect that he is due as the county judge executive.
Well, I have a question.
Obviously, that's up to the board, but it's been voted on, so I don't know what good it's going to do other than just rile everybody.
Ronnie, that's not up for you to decide. I mean, this is up for the board to be able to hear from the county judge executive. We're not asking him to make any decisions or influence anyone. We want to hear what he has to say. I'm certainly interested in hearing what he has to say.
Because obviously it's important to him if he drove down there.
We suspend the rules to allow the county judge executive to address this board.
I have a question.
I think
I got a motion. I'm looking for a second.
I think Libby seconded, Tag.
Okay.
I think. All right, so now you can discuss whether you want to suspend the rules.
We have a motion on the floor to suspend the rules, and the purpose is
to allow the county judge executive to address the board.
For what reason?
Don't know what he wants to say, but I think if the county judge executive is willing to drive into town, come down
I think
board,
if he jumps in his vehicle and drives down there, it's obviously something that he feels is important that the board
we should allow that. Surely we can respect his position enough to allow that.
If it's in dispute to something I said, we would have to have the mayor here if you're going to dispute something that I said.
Listen, I have no idea.
We would have to have the mayor come down here and the county judge executive at the same time.
That's fine with me. If you,
as I said, we don't know what he wants yet because nobody has actually listened.
This is.
But obviously, it was important to him to get in his vehicle and drive down there.
This is a little bit unusual here. I don't know.
Well, DT,
I agree. I think
Glasgow VP, everything's unusual.
You're having discussion right now, so everybody be sure they get their discussion in, then you'll have a vote whether you want to suspend.
We're going to have a vote on whether or not we're going to allow the suspension of the rules to allow Michael Hill to speak.
If we don't know what he's addressing us about, I have a little problem with that.
Well, I trust the county judge executive.
I don't have a problem with the county judge
talk about
addressing
something
the
that's
board that's
relevant.
important at any time.
And
I
how long?
don't think he's going to come in here and want to play patty cake or anything. I think he's going to want to talk about something that's important.
And obviously, if he got in his vehicle and drove down there, it's something that is important to him that he wants this board to hear. So we could at least be respectful enough of his position to do that. Well, it ain't gonna take but a minute. I mean, Lord, it ain't like we're going anywhere else at the moment.
All right. We want to take a vote on it?
Yeah. If everybody's finished, I think you're ready for a vote.
Tag?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Glenn?
No.
Mr. Witcher?
No.
Chairman votes no also.
Are y'all really serious? You are that disrespectful that you won't even let the county judge executive address the board?
Other people would like to address the board too.
Well, this is the county judge executive. So like I said, that's just really disrespectful. But
we can put him on the next month's meeting.
We certainly can. If he wants to address the board, we'll put him on the agenda.
Well, it's still
What's the difference?
just for the record. So move on.
All right. I think the next item, DT, was the court orders. Billy Ray mentioned maybe I'd have something to report. Only thing I can tell you as far as court orders, I think I sent an email. Unless somebody has any questions about it, I think it was pretty self-explanatory. The judge was wanting to be sure that Billy Ray's employment was still off the table as far as any special meetings, but otherwise you can have a special meeting. So he called the attorneys in and said he was going to issue that order, and then you guys have seen a copy of it. So
Yes.
that's
The
all
order is,
I'm aware of.
And speaking of court orders, did you, the rest of y'all board members, did you all know that DT was having Matt Baker to file something against Judge Alexander with the Court of Appeals? Were you all aware of that?
I believe I got a letter from Matt Baker one day this past week.
Marlon, were you aware that that was being done?
I've got notice, I guess, one day last week.
So
Okay.
not before it was done. I guess is the question. Were you aware that it was being done before it was done?
Right.
Anybody?
What do you mean? Like,
Were you aware that DT was having Matt Baker to file the writ of mandamus to the Court of Appeals to overturn Judge Alexander's ruling before it was filed?
No,
I got the letter, but I wasn't aware of anything until I got that letter.
Okay.
Well, who instructed him to file a writ of mandamus against with the Court of Appeals?
Exactly.
Mr. Baker has been authorized to redeem our rights to operate, and he's using his best judgment.
Once again, DT, who authorized Matt Baker to file the writ of mandamus to the Kentucky Court of Appeals to overturn Judge Alexander's ruling?
We did that when we voted.
No, we
to
did not
conform.
do anything because this was never brought before the board. The first knowledge we had of it was when we received an email with a copy of it.
Mr.
And as far as
Baker,
letters
Mr.
y'all
Baker
talk
was
about, I still
engaged to,
one of those.
Mr. Baker was engaged to recover the board's rights and to defend
That-
us in this action. And
No.
it's the best
That is not
choice.
what he was
not.
engaged to do. That was never discussed. We can go back and
No,
look at the
It
minutes,
was not.
but that is not what he was engaged to do. He was engaged because Ronnie felt like he was not in the position to be able to do this because he is the board counsel. So we've replaced Ronnie with Mr. Baker, but we gave
To
him
defend
no
us
instruction.
and
We
recover
gave him
our
no
rights.
instruction as to what positions he should be advocating for or against. That
Well-
must have come unilaterally from you, Mr. Chairman, not
Mr.
from the
Hughes-
board body.
Mr. Hughes has gone into court and advocated for people who are not in charge of the board.
Yeah,
And paid for it.
we are entitled to that representation. You, however, sir, are not entitled to unilaterally direct counsel of this board to do the things you see fit. We have to address these things through the board, discuss these items in a fully transparent way before the public so that they have an understanding as to what they are paying for. It's not your personal attorney, it's the board's attorney. Those
Really?
items have to be addressed as a board body. Period.
Okay. Next item. Is there
And this-
anyone?
I take it nobody had a question for me about the Judge Alexander's order.
That's pretty
I don't
self-explanatory,
have any
wasn't it,
question
Ronnie?
for you, Ron.
Yeah, I think it was, Tag. It just,
DT's
do
just
everything,
open-
do what you need to do, but don't discuss Billy. So,
That's the way I took it.
and then I guess as a follow-up, just to let you know, you guys may be aware, as a follow-up to the judge's prior order, and also that particular day, I think they are getting the mediation reset if it's not for sure been set. It seems like they picked a date, but I hadn't seen anything in confirming for sure. But I think that's in the works to comply with Judge Alexander's comments that day.
And I guess that brings up another issue. Since I'm off the board after this evening, really, I won't have any participation, don't feel like, because there's no capacity for me to have any participation in any of the hearings because I can't take any action at that point. So I guess there's no need to really coordinate with my schedule. You'll have to coordinate with whoever the new board member is going to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mr. Hughes mentioned that he didn't think you'd be participating, so.
Okay.
I think that's all, DT, your next item.
Okay. Consider the report on the new retail rate suggestions.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, we were given some criteria and asked to produce a rate based on those criteria. And I've repeated those here, not in the exact language that you all issued it to me, but a pretty good paraphrase. First of all, you wanted either a $10 customer charge and a 20.
Really? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Looks like the mayor's at the dollar.
The mayor. Okay, now it looks like the mayor is.
Good.
So what am I supposed to do? Let him in?
Why not? Let both of them in. But no, but if only if both of them are there. If Michael Hess, county judge, can't come in, then hey,
Well,
it ain't none.
The board, as Tag said, the board can discuss and do what they want to, but none of these items are getting way far afield, and there may be
We're going to just get into it. We're not going to get this agenda done.
That's up to you all.
Billy Ray, is there? Billy Ray, is
I'm
there?
free for the rest of the evening.
Billy Ray,
Yes,
is there
sir.
anything on? Is there anything on this agenda that needs to be done while we're in session tonight?
Well, I think you all are in charge of that. But
Well, if there's something that the board needs to get done, we need to address it right now.
you don't have to. There's a ratification of a programming committee recommendation, but I emphasize the word ratification. We've already done it. I'm just trying to get it cleared in the minutes. And
All right, I'd suggest what we can do is adjourn the meeting and have the mayor and the judge come in and address us. What would you think of that?
Why are we adjourning the meeting?
We don't have anything else to do, and there's no reason to sit around and catfight over it all night.
Listen, the
I'm
public
not
should be aware.
catfighting.
The
I'm just trying
public
to
should
put
hear
the
every
facts
bit
out
of this.
there. And also, if you want to be technical about it, we still have not discussed any more about this new retail rate suggestion of yours.
Yeah, we were directed.
We were in the process, but I just asked Billy Ray if there's anything that needs our direct input and vote or not.
I heard, but as far as those rate designs, we do have just a little discussion on that because I want to point a few things out to you. Number one.
Wait a minute. Billy Ray has the floor on this issue, but the question is, is there a votable issue that needs our addressing tonight?
Billy, is there anything we need to vote on?
I mean, I don't think you're gonna vote on this report, but I was directed to do it, and I assembled my team.
I would say we're in a situation here where we have the mayor and the judge that want to address this board. But,
that's true, we do. Which
and I think that's perfectly okay, but
anyway, if y'all just be kind enough to indulge me, just give me a couple of seconds here. There's a few things that I want to point out to y'all when you're talking about the rate designs. So if I'm looking right here at the Solar Energy Industries Association, it says very plainly that the operation and regulation of electric utilities is fundamentally different from most other businesses. I think we can all agree on that. Now, if I jump over here to Utility Dive, then it says that rising renewables penetrations are increasing the need for utilities.
Are you putting anything on the agenda to vote on, Libby?
I'm talking about the rate design.
We don't have a motion on the floor.
I didn't ask for a motion. I'm trying to talk about this rate design.
You're not. This is a business meeting. This is a business meeting to pass motions. If you don't have one up.
I know exactly what a business meeting is.
Okay, well, put a motion on the floor. Put a motion on the floor. Put a motion on the floor.
If you would actually try to educate yourself, there are plenty of verifiable sources right here where you could do that about rate designs, about the need for rate designs. The need for rate designs basically is nothing.
I don't need an education.
It comes from technology and the ever-changing.
I don't need an education. I need a motion on the
floor.
floor.
No, obviously you do need an education instead of an agenda.
I have an agenda. The agenda item was to consider the report on the new retail rate
Right.
suggestion.
I wasn't speaking
I
for-
assume that report's coming from
That was
Billy.
not the agenda I was speaking of.
The visitors seem to have left the parking lot, just for your all's consideration.
Oh, good.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So,
Issue's
so
over.
Well, that's good,
DT,
because I'm sure there's some that didn't want to hear from certain ones anyway. So.
Billy Ray, you got the
Thank you.
floor. Billy
Go
Ray,
ahead,
you
Billy, I'm sorry.
have the floor. I hope
Libby,
you'll take it.
Libby, there will be a moment in a minute when Billy's finished that we'll move to accept this rate structure. We'll bring it up during discussion and you will have the floor. You speak
Thank
to
you.
to your heart's content.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so again, I was trying to go over the criteria that we were given at the last meeting, which some of it was in conflict with itself, and I'll explain that in a minute. Luckily, I was going to use this as an opportunity to do a little preaching on how rate design works, but actually, we distilled it to really just answers to your criteria, and I'm thankful that we've made that decision. But first of all, you said $10 customer charge, but $20 for commercial, so that we would be folding the 6 retail tariffs that we have for electricity into only 2. You asked for us to use the same kilowatt hour rate for all customers, but those in the industrial tariff, and that's the conflict I was talking about. If you've got customers that are paying $10 and some that are paying $20 that are in the same tariff, then you can't have the same kilowatt hour rate. So when we did this example, just used the $10 customer charge because there wasn't a way to accomplish everything you asked for by using all the criteria that you gave us.
I understand.
You said no net increase in income for the EPD. You said that industrial rates should not be subsidized. We took that to mean nobody should be subsidized. If you don't want the other tariff subsidizing industrial, then it follows that you don't want industrial subsidizing the other tariff. And you wanted it to be purely volumetric. No coincident peak demand, no time of use rates for this new super tariff. So these are the criteria that we use to do the math on. This graphic right here looks a little weird, but it represents all of the customers that would be in this new super tariff using their 2020 consumption. So what you're seeing here, let me see if I can help this some by zooming in a little bit. So what you're seeing here is 4 different criteria. The little blue bars are actual customer bills, the amount of their bill. And the orange one is the $10 customer charge that you all stipulated. The gray line is our actual operations cost per customer. And the yellow line here at the top is the actual amount of people's bill. So the way you do this, the way you do the math, is that if you're going to be purely volumetric, but you're trying to collect enough money to fund a fixed charge that's not volumetric, it's just fixed. There's so many dollars per customer that we need to raise in order for that customer to pay the cost of being their pro rata share of the grid. So it produced this kind of unusual number. It's the break-even point, which is where the total bill collects enough to pay the energy cost and the fixed cost, is 1,800 kilowatt hours, 1807. So all of these bills to the left of that break-even point then are customers that would be served at a loss, leaving only the ones on this side who, you can see there's a great diversity here in bills. You got everything from basically 0 kilowatt hours over here on the left. So the only thing on their bill would be the $10 customer charge. all the way over here to large, because you all stipulated that you wanted to combine residential and small commercial and medium commercial, everybody but residential. You've got people that are paying $7,000, $8,000 a month bills here. That's, you know, one of the things, if you sought my advice, and I realize that you haven't, but it's really impossible. And this is what TVA said in their regional letter on this. You just can't combine residential, somebody's garage or somebody's water pump with these giant customers like the hospital or Lowe's or big, pretty good sized industries, but still they're not called an industry because they're not quite big enough for that. So let's see if I can figure it. Here's the only other slide the main slide we've got on this is that to utilize the criteria you all set up, we would have, and let's see now if I can move your all's heads away from this so I can see it. So here's what it would look like. 1,700 customers would average paying $72 a month more than they've been paying. 5,800 customers would average paying $21 less. And so the math's pretty straightforward. So that these 5,800 people can pay less, 1,700 people have to pay a lot more to fund the sinking fund, if you will, for these customers to pay less. And here's who those people are. Let me move this again. Just to give you some idea of who we're talking about. Who are those 1,700 customers? Well, often they're the biggest employers in our community. Bluegrass Dairy and Food would pay $110,000 a year more. DJ Sampson would pay $91,000 a year more. Houchins, $89,000 a year more. Glasgow Independent School, $68,000 a year more. Marion County Schools, $51,000 a year more. The nursing homes, we just picked one of them, but they're all about in the same boat. $30,000 a year more than they've been paying. And we might argue considerably, and we have, about who are the low income whom you all feel need to be protected or need to be helped. Well, it's hard to figure that out by looking at addresses, but one thing I feel confident about, the Glasgow Housing Authority, the residents in their facilities must be low income people or they wouldn't qualify to be in there. They would go up to $22,000 a year. So this criteria produces, I hope, quite drastically different results than you might have thought when you were instructing us to do this. And with that, I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you for that report, Billy.
Any comments?
I'm waiting on you, so I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about this.
Well, I don't know about the rest of them, but I think that's probably about right. And I don't have a really big problem with it.
Well, now let's go back to that rate design, shall we? As I was saying just a little bit earlier, DT, a lot of, well, the biggest majority of the need for different rate designs now is simply technology. That's all it is. With the ever-changing, rapidly progressing technology, it has changed the energy industry as well. I know some people don't like change, but change happens no matter what. So, you know, I mean, if I'm sitting here looking at from the Leadership for Rate Design, which is a supplement to the Public Power magazine, it says here that as technology continues to develop in ways we might not be able to foresee today, electrification of heating, for example, or advances in electricity storage, the penalties for pricing that does not reflect cost threaten to multiply. I've got article after article after article here that talks about the need for different rate designs moving forward in the future, away from volumetric pricing. And I have literally begged you gentlemen for months and months and months to simply educate yourself and make your own informed decisions and opinions rather than what somebody else tells you. But I mean, I've got multiple articles here that I'll be happy to share with y'all. They're from McKinsey and Company, Rocky Mountain Institute, Utility Dive. We've got even the Regulatory Assistance Project. I've got an article from them. So, you know, like I said, I have begged y'all for months to simply educate yourself and make an informed decision on your own research instead of simply what somebody tells you. And DT, I fully respect that you have an IQ, but that does not make you right on everything.
So I just want to make sure we get this straight. I just heard the chairman say he is okay with our community's largest employers supplementing the bills of the ones that can afford to pay, because we know the ones that are usually the lowest income earners are normally the ones that have the highest consumption, because they cannot afford to do building envelope improvements like replacement windows, insulation, high efficiency air conditioning and heating. Those are going to be hit hard too, as is referenced right here by the housing authority customers. We can only assume that not just the housing authority customers, but other low income users are going to get hit by this too. So we're going to have a net increase in the bills of the lowest income earners in our community. We're going to have a net substantial increase in the bills from some of our largest employers, which apparently everybody's okay with, considering we need those employers to create jobs so that we all don't end up down at the housing authority. And the people that are going to get this benefit are going to be the people that fall kind of in the middle of that, who are the ones that are normally paying their bills anyway. And the net benefit to them is about $21 on average. I just want to make sure I heard the chairman say a second ago that he is okay with that. You're okay with that?
He said it.
Okay.
You know, I have
And
the problem.
I guess we'll find out in a minute if one of our council members is also okay with that. And we're going to find out if another board member who also is a business owner in this community is okay with that. We'll learn here in a minute exactly what they're okay with.
I mean, and I have a problem with the fact that it's going to be making a higher bill for the people who can least afford it. And that is just so contradictory to everything DT's been preaching on.
You're going to argue a number, DT?
What you're saying is basically not necessarily true. You may have some statistics on somebody who uses a lot of power that can't afford it. I see too many people that don't use power that need to be able to have it. And they're just sitting in the dark and they're turning their power off because the cost is just wiping them out. Now, I know that cost for TJ it would be a $91,000 increase. That's $8,000 a month. Their income, that is a trivial amount of money to those guys. It's not a big deal. But to grandma down here who gets these rates, she gets the cost. Now, it isn't as though they're paying more for the power. That means they're paying exactly the same dollar per kilowatt hour as grandma. And if they're using that much more power and they're not paying it, then grandma is. And that's what's happening.
It's the
No,
opposite.
what's happening
You
is
are-
right now, people are paying for what they
What
actually,
they actually use. Nobody's getting supplemented in the current rate structure. That's the beauty of the current rate structure. You're taking, you're mixing up your, who's getting screwed here. Okay, what the non-volumetric rate.
I'd just like you to go out and poll this town to figure out who's getting screwed.
if they keep listening to you, because
Please,
you are saying the exact
You're on this.
why, what more do you not understand?
Billy, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
I was trying to say that in all this discussion alleging who's getting quote unquote screwed, not once has anybody, either on this board or otherwise, asked us, the authority, who can look at the actual cost each customer is paying, for an answer. We just keep repeating anecdotes where people believe they are paying too much. And I can tell you, most of the time, I can't say all the time, the overwhelming majority amount of the time, when we look into people that are saying that, we find out they're paying less than they ever were. It's just a handy, flippant refrain that people like to throw around, and which the chairman just repeated, that's simply not true.
Yeah, because I mean, DT, you can sit there and talk about you don't have a problem with TJ paying $91,000 more a year, or Houchins, or the school systems. I do have a problem with the housing authority residents, with the housing authority paying $22,000 more per year, because as was just stated, not only is that the people that can least afford it, but when you go out on all these streets that have these rundown rentals that property owners do not take care of, those are the people that can least afford it too, and they're going to fall into that same category. So what you say you're fighting for, you're going in direct opposition of what you say you're doing. I mean, it makes no sense.
Hey, Billy, I had a question. Billy.
You're okay with the housing authority and residents and that income having their bills go up.
Billy, I had a question.
Okay.
Now the housing authority, that's sort of, their electric bill sort of figured in with their monthly rent. Is that correct? Somewhat?
Well, Glenn, I've been lucky enough in my life not to be a resident, so I can't really answer that.
I believe you're right. In some cases, Glenn, I believe you're right, but it is figured in. But you can rest assured that if the housing authority gets an aggregate bill that's higher, the rent's going up.
Yeah, if it goes above a certain amount, I think they raise the rent a little or something.
And I can show you, being in the housing industry, Glenn, that every single person that has anything through the housing authority, know their utilities are not always factored into it. They use an average utility bill to come to the amount that they will pay for a client, but their actual utility bill is not figured into. I have several renters who have vouchers through the housing authority. Their rent or their utility bills are not, they still have to pay their normal utility bills.
Listen, I have a feeling that all of the phone calls that city council and the mayor and the judge executive have gotten, and magistrates and whomever else has been involved, from this over the last 5 years, and all of the phone calls they've gotten from people complaining, I think it's going to pale in comparison to the phone calls you're going to get from some of the largest industrial job providers in this community when this gets out tomorrow, of what it's going to cost. It's going to pale in comparison.
The newest one coming.
Out of the frying pan into the fire is where we're headed.
Okay.
At this point, we're just considering this, though, right? I mean, this is what
We're considering a rate that is a cost per kilowatt hour, which is the same for everybody.
But we're not voting on
People who use a
anything.
lot pay a lot. Those that use a small amount pay a lot. You pay for what you get. When you go to the gas station, you don't go in there and they say, I'm going to charge you $20 to pull up to the pump, and then you can buy some gas. If you want to buy $1 worth of gas, you can buy. But here we make them pay before they even start. And it turns out that if you're on the low end, you get screwed.
DT, how many times does it have to be explained to you we pay for what we use now. I don't understand what part of that you do not understand.
You don't seem to understand what an average is and what a
No, I
per
understand
kilowatt
what
hour
goes
is.
on with this utility
If I
company.
want to buy
Because
100
I took it
kilowatt
upon
hours, I want to
myself
pay for
to educate
100 kilowatt
myself,
hours.
not just follow along blindly with what somebody else wants to do. I educate myself and make my own informed and educated decisions.
Okay,
It might behoove you to try doing the same.
Billy Ray, is there anything that you think we can make a motion on and move on this tonight?
Well, if you will humor me, I would like to point out something that everybody perhaps needs to hear again. That volumetric solution that you just suggested, that people shouldn't have to pay for something they don't use, that's the problem that you keep glossing over or skipping over is the fixed costs. There are fixed
It's
costs.
added to the volume and it's part of the fixed cost. It's the same cost per kilowatt hour.
Will you allow me to finish my explanation, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman? The fixed costs are what is attributable to each customer for the grid, everything about the grid that they have access to. Your suggestion that if you use 0 kilowatt hours, you should pay 0 flies in the face of any kind of economic analysis of how business works. Everybody that has a connection to the grid enjoys benefits that are not equal to the volume of energy that they buy. You've got to not gloss over that because it is a huge element of rate making. We pay for every customer fixed costs. We pay for energy that we buy from TVA. We pay for peak demand. Those three all go together. Like fixed costs, part of it's debt service. You know, when you all do a bond issue and we borrow the money, the payments on that have 0 to do with the volume of energy people buy. So what I tried to show you through this chart is that when you demand volumetric, you get this lopsided return curve where that everybody to the left of this break-even point pays less than the cost of serving them.
All the service is calculated into that. Every bit of it.
It's calculated into it and it works for everybody that uses 1,807 kilowatt hours. If you use less than that, you do not pay in enough to recover the cost of your service. That is the basis for this whole rate-making adventure that we've been on for the last 6.5 years.
I think it's a mistake.
You all discuss it as if that's something Billy Ray made up. It just can't be allowed because that's not the way the economics of a utility work. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah, time to move. I don't think we're going to have a motion on this. Next item.
So are you all giving me, is there any task that I am to perform relative to this or just?
No, I think we're just wasting our time talking about it, Billy Ray.
Okay, well, you know, those, as long as time goes by and we're not addressing the rates to try to keep them current and accurate, then the longer you wait, the greater the correction is going to be when you do decide to work on it.
Yeah, you all, listen, this board is at this point not being responsible with their duty. We have to, you know, we are already 60 days, 90 days behind on presenting a rate structure to TVA for approval. We want to go ahead and push it out, I guess, another 30 days. I don't see that as being very responsible. Matter of fact, you're probably neglecting your duty as one of your most basic duties as a member of this board, and that is setting the rate so the ratepayers know what they're going to pay. So, you know, I would highly recommend that the chairman, you know, go ahead and push this, at least get it in front of TVA so that we can have a clear understanding of what, you know, they believe we can and can't do. This is something that is a basic responsibility of this board, is setting the rate design for the customer.
And just for clarification, DT, if you go back to the businesses, Like a typical business uses max demand to cover fixed cost, not CPD, but max. So like I said, it's all about try actually learning about the business and how it works instead of just coming up with your own conclusion. There's all kinds of education available.
What size businesses are you talking about to use max PD?
I'm talking about TJ. I'm talking about your larger businesses, Glenn.
All your medium to large commercial are going to be on
Yeah.
demand, what they call a demand schedule.
Not your small though.
Yeah, I mean, not your size, Glenn, but
Right.
anybody that uses more than 50 kW max per month has, since the beginning of time, paid part of their fixed cost through a demand charge. And one of the reasons of this really dramatic change from your all's criteria is that you said no more demand charge. Well, then we've got to figure out a way to collect all those fixed costs through a really large adder to the kilowatt hours, which means anybody that uses more than an average amount of kilowatt hours is not just paying a higher bill. These numbers represent how much more they are paying than their cost of service. If you all wanted to go forward with this, you would be making a determination that these customers, and 1,700 like them, have been given the mantle of responsibility to pay extra. You're taxing them, and you're collecting that money to give to 5,800 other customers. So just be clear what your decision would be.
Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Okay, this is the ratification matter. We talked when you all approved a rate increase for cable TV, and we based that on some guesses about what Bray Media, who was the last remaining holdout, was going to do, and it turned out they did about what we guessed. These represent what we've been paying for WBKO, ABC, Fox, and CW. So we're paying $8.60 today per subscriber. And now, I shouldn't have said today, that's what we were paying in 2020. Now that it's 2021, we're paying $2.15 per subscriber more. And that's about what we guessed. So while your decision on the rate increase was sound, just to keep the minutes straight, the programming committee recommended we accept WBKO's offer, and I would like it if you all would show that you accepted their recommendation.
I make a motion.
I move we accept the recommendation of the
Programming committee's recommendation.
Oh, I second, Libby, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, was I talking over you?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Libby?
Aye.
Tag?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mr. Witcher?
Aye.
Said aye. Chairman votes aye.
And I don't have a slide on it, Mr. Chairman, but I put it in the narratives. You've got two members of the programming committee whose terms are expiring. So you need to be thinking about who you'd like to put on there. I'm sorry I didn't put that on the slide, but I should have.
Do we have anyone who's volunteered?
I never know whether to ask for volunteers until I know what the board has in mind. So if you'd like for me to.
In general, you're looking for a warm body who wants to really work, right?
Well, that's your description, not mine.
This is a lot of work and a lot of harassment, and I think it's harder to find somebody. I mean, if we had a large plethora of people to pick from, then we can make selections. But I think you're going to be looking for somebody to come up and say, "I'll do it."
Well, if you'd like for me to try to find a couple of willing folks, including the people that are already on there, just let me know and I'll.
I think that's what, and unless I'm missing the board, unless they have any options here. I don't, have a preference, and I think finding somebody who's willing to work on these boards is very difficult to do. And if you find somebody forward that wants to do it, I wouldn't object. And I don't think anybody will turn anybody down.
Okay, I'll see what I can find and present you some names at the next meeting.
That would be great.
Yeah.
The one thing left is my customary reports. Part of it's not customary, but I'll go through these real quickly. The December load factor performance is in front of you, and as you can see right there, it was very good. It was nearly a record efficiency for December, and we're starting off January with a pretty good one as well. The fuel cost adjustment for February the 1st is a decrease of 0.083 cents per kilowatt hour. There's practically no change in this. This is the report on those who have chosen to be on the fixed optional rate versus the variable rate. Still, the overwhelming percentage of people choose to be on the variable rate. And since the last month, this has changed. I think maybe 18 or 20 people on the small commercial, no change at all, really. This is how we wound up 2020 on the collection of the extra quarter on the coincident peak demand in order to cover our misses. Unfortunately, we had a lot more misses than hits in 2020, but the misses were small. So we missed collecting $35,000 that TVA billed us for, but that's a small enough number that when you all are willing to consider some electric retail change, we probably won't ask to fund that any higher of a rate. Finally, I thought it'd be good for everybody to hear just what happened to us. You might think that an explosion at the AT&T facility in Nashville wouldn't have a big impact on us, but it turned out that it did. These lines represent the circuits we have to the outside world for internet traffic. And you can see when the explosion happened on Christmas morning, this AT&T circuit disappeared. So Josh and his team had to come in on Christmas and start moving customers over to our redundant circuits. And you'll notice that after he got that done, this is a flat line, which you don't normally see when you're measuring our internet throughput. The reason it's flat is that those other circuits were maxed out. It's Christmas morning. A lot of people got new devices, and there was a lot of demand, and we had less capacity than we needed. So the result was a flat line where our circuits were maxed out. And that continued through the next day, through Saturday. This dip is just the wee hours of the morning where some people got off of their devices and gave the circuits a little bit of a rest. But as soon as they started getting up, we were pegged again. And so it was flat throughout Saturday, through the remainder of Saturday, and then Sunday. Of course, everybody knows that AT&T was busily trying to reconfigure their standby power to the devices in that building on 2nd Avenue. Of course, they lost power to the building, so they had to go to their generators. The generators are fueled with natural gas. Because of fires, the natural gas was cut off. So they had no power, had no way to power the devices in their network operations center. So they found truck-mounted generators and brought them in and drilled holes in the side of the building and ran cables in to try to get things going again. And you can see where they became successful. Middle of the day or early afternoon on Sunday, the AT&T circuit became active again, and Josh was able to put load on it. And so we got our more characteristic, very high holiday weekend traffic. This last one is the surprise that we got because a few years ago, we presented a plan to have 3 geographically diverse routes for our internet traffic. One pointed toward Nashville, one pointed toward I-75 over at London, and one pointed to Louisville and beyond to Indianapolis. So we were quite puzzled while we were having all this trouble with the AT&T circuit that wasn't supposed to go to Nashville. What we found out after rehashing or debriefing after this outage is that they indeed carried our traffic to Louisville, but inexplicably made a U-turn and sent that traffic right back down I-65 to Nashville, which was not what our contract said they were supposed to do. And they are in process of fixing that now, but for several years, our traffic's been making this long round trip to Louisville and then back down to Nashville. And until the explosion, we were oblivious to it. So redundancy is a good thing. We'd like to have some more of it. Now we're maybe thinking about, we'd like to go further to the west, maybe go to St. Louis or something. But that's on our long range plans. Right now, we just like to keep these 3 circuits fully functional. So I just thought, I'd like to hear about that.
Very good.
And that, of course, I keep putting this on the agenda, whether you all want to change the meeting format. I assume you don't, but I just don't know how to not put it on the agenda. Other than that, that's all I've got for you.
Your motion to adjourn?
Hold on just a minute. Tonight is Tag's last meeting. His term has expired. It will expire at the end of the month. So regardless of all the all the time back through the years and the ugliness and all that, Tag, I appreciate the fact that you have served on this board. I appreciate very much the fact that you are willing to dig in, educate yourself, and learn about the EPB, how it operates, how rates work. I appreciate the fact that you have dug in and learned, educated yourself on what you're talking about. And, I appreciate the passion that you bring to this table, because I know that passion results from wanting Glasgow to be the best that it can possibly be.
Well, thank you, Libby, and I appreciate that. And listen, as much as we've hashed it out and argued and fussed and fought over things, it's not, to me anyway, it's never has been a personal issue with anybody. It's always been about what I thought was going to be best for this organization, for the EPB, for all of the employees, management down here, and the ratepayer themselves. And, maybe, I'm a little bit zealous when it comes to trying to protect this for the future of my family and the other people that come along behind me. I want to ensure that we've left them with something that's viable and prosperous and is where they can, come out and get a good job, and we all have opportunity with our community. And despite what everybody thinks, this utility has a very large impact on that future and that future prosperity for our community. Decisions are made based on what is the second most important thing when it comes to manufacturing and industry, and that's the cost of power and the reliability of that power, so they can manufacture their goods or produce their services. And so anyway, that's always been my focus. I've always tried to uphold a high level of integrity, and me, I'm a process person, try to keep our eye on the process of doing things the right way. So it's been a pleasure, and I will just leave you with.
You there?
I think he went out in a flash.
I know. I was going to say he left for real when he said it.
I think Tag has worked hard. Working at public service, anybody puts into it. You put in far, far more than you'll ever get out of it, and get a lot more harassment. And you're never going to catch up. And I think the time that he spent doing it should be appreciated by everybody in this town. And I think that's true of all these members because they're all taking a lot of heat and won't get much for it. And hopefully will persevere. I presume he went out in a flash and
I was going to say one last thing. We may not always agree on policy, but I appreciate him being willing to serve on the board. I know he's done it for about 4 years, so
he's worked hard.
I'd like to thank him for serving on the board.
He's worked hard.
I guess he really did go out with a bang. Okay, so I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second it. All in favor? Aye. Shut your computers down.